Hello and welcome. My name is Tristan Thomas with Mend Sourcing, and in today's video what we're going to do is show you how to bid on a government contract competitively. Now, a lot of the clients that I speak with, they're bidding on contracts but they're not winning many awards, if any at all. And then the question I'm getting asked a lot is, how do I make sure that my pricing is right? Like what we have our manufacturer or our distributor's pricing. We have to take into account what the cost of the packaging is, plus we want to add in our profit margin on top of this. But how do we place a bid inside of this contract to make sure that we have an opportunity to actually win this? But also, in the same respect, we want to make sure that if we do win a contract, that we're actually making profit. Unfortunately, I have seen some of our clients that will win an award, but then if you take into all of the costs associated with fulfilling that award, they're actually losing out. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we can provide you a step-by-step guide to putting in a successful bid. And we're going to do that in today's video. And before we do jump into this, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to this channel as we try to put out as many videos as we can to help you win your first government contract, or if you're already in the space, how to win more. So with that, let's dive in. So how do we bid on a government contract competitively? Well, let's go step by step with actually how to go about doing that. First and foremost, we have to figure out how do we source our items properly. So what you want to do is you want to start looking at items where you have a competitive advantage. And there's many ways to think about that. Maybe it's your area of expertise and you have certain connections where others may not have. Or maybe there's some relationships that you've already established, maybe in a previous job or a previous endeavor that you've worked on, and you're able to source those items. So check that. Also, question yourself, can I go to the manufacturer directly, or do I have to go through a distributor? And with that being said, what I want you to think about is, how can I X out the distributor as often as I possibly can? Unfortunately, that's not always the case, and you do have to go through a distributor. Typically, it's an authorized distributor, but think about it. You have then the manufacturer's cost, the authorized distributor's cost, and then you're adding in your own margin, and then you're bidding on the contract. More than likely, you're going to lose out. I'm not saying that that's always the case, but the more distributors that you can X out and go directly to the manufacturer, the more competitive you will be. So what you want to do is you want to build a strategic relationship and talking to the right person at the right company that's going to quote you direct. And a statement that I use a lot is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you go to a manufacturer and you ask for a price and then they come back with a no bid, but then they're giving you their signature at the bottom, their name, their phone number, pick up that phone, give them a call and figure out exactly why are they not going to bid. Figure out ways in which you can build that relationship with that individual from that manufacturer, right? What I want you to make sure that you're staying away from, though, is stay away from sourcing your items from a place where everyone can source those items from, such as Amazon. I've had clients that have tried to purchase things through there. Also, like I mentioned, the distributor. If you can get away from going through a distributor, do that. Go directly to the source if it's available. Also, just really think about your own network that you've created over these years. Where are the areas that you have easier access to that others do not? So that's step one in sourcing the item. Step number two, what we want to do is we need to now, okay, we have the cost from our supplier. Now we gotta think about, okay, what is the cost associated with the packaging of this specific item? So you need to understand the packaging specs, and there's really two different areas. It's going to be Mill Standard 2073, and anytime you see Mill Standard 2073, realize that it will be more complex, and with that complexity comes a level of expense. And then you have ASTM packaging, which is military commercial packaging. I have put on another video on how to actually do the ASTM packaging. That video will go over that. If you're needing the material, our company can supply that to you at a relatively inexpensive cost as well too. But those are the two types of packaging specifications that you have to understand or know someone that does. Now, as I mentioned, when it comes to the ASTM packaging and the video that I put out, you do have the ability to package the item yourself. And if you can, do it. If you can ensure that it's going to be done correctly, by all means do it, because you're reducing the amount of overall cost it is in order to package this item. Or what you can do is you can find a trusted packaging house to package the item. And I boldened the trusted because there's a lot of packaging houses out there. And what I'm finding is that there's really two things that you got to look at. The level of their comprehension, so how much do they understand about this type of government packaging, and what is their level of confidence. Unfortunately, many times you'll have companies that are very low on what they comprehend and understand, but they're super confident to tell you that they know how to do that packaging. So you want to make sure that you can find a trusted packaging house. Our company, we brought the packaging in-house because we found that if we're in control of that, we know that we can do it correctly. Also too, a lot of packaging houses out there will charge you 4 to 5 times what their cost is. And if your packaging cost is too much, even if you put in a bid, it's not going to be competitive and you're going to lose out. So you want to find a trusted packaging house that is relatively inexpensive for the type of material that's needed. Now, a shameless plug is that our company, Mend Sourcing, can do the packaging something for you and do it competitive. What we're doing here is we really are trying to beat the industry standard of how much people are charging for packaging. So if you are needing a quote on packaging, you can send us the solicitation. We'll review it. We'll give you a quote right then and there, a flat fee of how much it would cost if we did the packaging. But our job here is to keep you competitive. So if you do, reach out to us and we can give you a quote on packaging, either Mill Standard 2073 or ASTM. So once you've come across what the packaging cost is associated with making sure that you can fulfill this order, now what you want to do is incorporate all of the cost to fulfill that order. So you want to factor in your cost. Look at what the cost of the item is, right? That's from your supplier, whomever that might be. Also, shipping that item to your location. So if you're in Los Angeles, like we are, and you're getting your item from New York, well, that's got to go across the country. So there's a cost associated with shipping it to your location. So factor that in. Also, labor to package. It does take time to package an item. So how much is that going to cost? Plus the packaging material, you need to incorporate that. And then there's also other hidden costs that you may not necessarily come across that you need to take into account. Anytime that you're doing a government contract, you need to have a certificate of conformance. It's ensuring that the item conforms to the requests on the contract. Some companies do charge that. Also, maybe there's a production lot test report, or maybe there's a first article test that needs to be completed. Those companies will charge you for that if they do a PLT or an FAT. So know what the cost is there. Also, maybe there's DFAR charges. A few of our manufacturers that we work with, they charge $50 here for a DFAR. There's certain items that they may need to account for in order to fulfill the order accurately. So go back to your supplier and make sure that they are doing it correctly. Then when you have all of your costs all incorporated and you know exactly what your total cost is, then you have to add your margin. Now, typically what people do here is they'll add a certain percentage on whatever their total cost is, and that is their margin. But a friend of mine who was in government contracting pointed this out when I first started, and it really has stuck with me. When you're first starting out, what you need to do is ask yourself the question, what is the amount of profit, so the dollar amount, that I am wanting to make on this award? He said, forget about you focusing on a 10% or 15% or 20, whatever the percentage is, and think about looking at all of the work that I need to do in order to fulfill this order. How much money do I want to make? That's what you want to do. So adding in a blanket 15 or 20% will more than likely price you out of being competitive in bidding on this contract. So instead, ask yourself, how much money do you want to make? Because we need to realize that the lowest overall price is most likely going to win the award. So the DLA looks at price per item first, then the days of delivery. So let me give you an example. If I have $10 per item and the government needs an item in 50 days, but I can get it to them in 45 days, but then there's another company out there that's able to give it for $9 a piece, and they're able to do it at 100 days, more times than not, the one item that takes priority is the price. So that company that's giving it at $9 in 100 days is more likely to win. So look at your overall price. How do you keep it lowest as possible? Now, obviously you want to add your margin, whatever that margin is. Now, one thing that I get from a lot of our clients is, well, if I'm putting in a price, my price isn't competitive. And they're basing that on the previous history of that request for quotation. So as you see right here, this is the procurement history of a specific contract. And what it's telling us here is that the last time that this was ordered, or the award was won, was 26 pieces at $308 a piece. And that was done in 2024, as you see right here, 26, 308 in 2024. Previous to that was 521 at 172 in 2023. Now, big thing that I want to talk to you about when it comes to the procurement history is that this only tells you a story. It's saying that, hey, this cage code was able to win an award for a quantity of X at Y cost in this year. It's only providing you a list of the last award for that specific item. This does not mean that the awarded company fulfilled the contract. To give you an example, I remember that I wanted to bid $100 per unit on an item, but I only put in $10 per unit on that item. We won the award. I realized that it didn't make sense. I had to go back to the DLA and cancel the contract. But now for that NSN, forevermore, it's going to say that the last time that someone won it was our cage code at $10 a piece, even though we never fulfilled it. So the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention is because if you look at the previous history, realize that it's only telling you a story. It shouldn't stop you from bidding on this item. Now, with that being said, as I mentioned, use the previous few years as a gauge, not a price that you must beat. You don't have to beat the previous one. Yes, the DLA wants you to, but you don't have to. Don't let this be the main factor based on previous history. So now let's go into our bidding tool. Now we use a very comprehensive bidding tool, and I wanted to see how can I simplify it most for our viewers here. So here's a great tool that you can use. Reach out to me and I can help you build out this tool if you're looking for it as well too. It can be done through a simple Excel program, right? But let's look at exactly how we we go about doing it. So if we go through the steps that I had talked about previously, the first thing we see here is that the quantity requested is 1,250 each in this example. If I go to a manufacturer, the cost they come back at here is $41.76. So now I take 1,250 and multiply by 41.76, and my total manufacturing cost comes to $52,200. Also, let's just say that they're in a different location to where I am. The shipping cost associated with that comes to $125. Now, getting rid of all of that, taking care of all of that, now we got to look at, are there any CERT or FAT costs associated with it? In this example, there are none, but it's part of the tool that we're using right here because I need to incorporate that into my overall cost. Then when I have all of that is right there, what I want to then look at is my packaging cost. So maybe I send it to Mend, send a solicitation with the dimensions of the item, and they come back and they say, hey, the total packaging to get this done is going to cost you $750. So now I have all of my costs associated with this item. Now, the next thing that I got to look at here is I need to look at what my overall cost is. So taking into account the total units, cost per unit, the total packaging, CERT cost, FAT cost, PLT cost, all of that. If I'm adding that all up, the total cost to me is $53,075. Now, I now should look at exactly what is going to be my cost per unit. So in this case, looking at the cost per unit, I'm taking the 53,075, dividing it by 1,250 pieces, and I'm coming to a total cost per unit of $42.46. So I have all of that, and I know exactly what my cost per unit is going to be. But now what I want to do is I want to dive into what I want my profit to be. So I'm looking at this contract and thinking, okay, based upon all the work that I'm doing here, how much money would I want to make on this contract? And let's just say theoretically, I'm saying if I made $4,000 on this award, I'd be happy. So after all the dust settles, I paid off everyone's taken care of, I'm walking away with a profit of $4,000 on this. So what that's now going to lead me to is it's going to lead me to what my award amount is going to be. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking my total cost, right, the 53,075, adding my profit to give my total award amount, which would be 57,075. So if they issue the award for this amount, I'm going to walk away with $4,000. So once I have that, now what I got to do is I got to look at exactly what is going to be my bid price per item. Because when I go into DIBBS and I quote this item, they're asking what is the cost per unit to them, right? So I'm taking my award amount and dividing it by the 1,250 to give me a bid price of $45.66. And another part of this tool that I need to know is exactly, well, what's my margin going to be, right? And in this case, I'm looking at about a 7% margin here. So this is the tool that we use to make sure that, one, we're bidding correctly, so we're not actually taking a loss on this, because if my bid price is less than my cost per unit, taking into all of these factors, I'm losing out on this. But also, I want to make sure that my profit is a good amount of money where it's worth the time that I'm investing in. All of this, going through it in this methodology or this process, is going to leave me with the best bid price that fits my particular situation. Now, before we finish up this video's important takeaways that I want to leave you with is, one, like I mentioned earlier, you want to try to source directly from the manufacturer if possible. The more middlemen you can cut out, and this is talking as a middleman, the more likely you are to win that contract. If we are talking about you not wanting to do the packaging house, you got to find a company that's going to be worth your time and that you can trust, that's going to still make you competitive, but also do it right. The last thing you want to do is pay for something that's cheap and then it's done incorrectly. So find a packaging house that you can trust. Our company can definitely do that packaging for you. And then when it comes to the profit, don't tack on a 7% or 20% or whatever percentage you want to add on top of what your total cost is. Ask yourself the question, how much profit do I want to make on this item? Best way to start off if you're trying to win your first award. Then also, when it comes to the procurement history, just use that as a gauge. Don't think too much into it. Don't let that stop you from bidding on the contract because your bid price is less than the previous award, whatever it might be. And then last thing, tell this to everyone, be smart. Because you need this, you got to make money on these and bid often. Do not just put in 2 bids on 2 different contracts and expect to win. It took us 3 months before we won our first award, and that came with a ton of different bids that we did. Now, looking back 3.5 years, close to 4 years now, we have 170 some odd contracts with the government, and it all started with us continuously bidding on items. And with that, again, this video really is just to help you bid on a government contract more competitively, step-by-step guide in doing that. Our company, Mend Sourcing, really has focused on government contract for, like I mentioned, 4 years, but we really are trying to focus on helping you be better at bidding on government contracts, winning these government contracts, and fulfilling it correctly. Again, we put out these videos, try a few times a month, at least once a month. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe to this channel as we try to put these videos out for you to make sure you are better at government contracting. And with that, I want to thank you for your time and you have a good day.